course, for one thing, every human has to have the basis. For example, as a chemist, I have to be a chemist in order for me to start innovating in chemistry. If I wanted to innovate in engineering, I wouldn't be able to do so. Or in medicine, I can't. It's not my field. Okay? So I don't have the background for it. So first of all, you need the background. Second, after you get the background, then you start thinking. Now, who instills this thinking process into the human being? Why is it that, for example, you have people who think, but they won't get a result? And then all of a sudden, something happens, a spark in the brain occurs, and a solution is found. Where did that come from? How did that happen? Okay, of course, these are questions that science, as far as I know, does not have an answer for as of yet. Okay? But we think in the school of thought, in the Islamic school of thought, that God inspires, God instills these ideas once a person has the background. Okay, once the person has the foundation, then he can excel, or she. Okay, so this is the unity of the action. Fourth is the unity of worship. And that's Tawheed. And which is the unity of the worship. That's we worship Him and Him alone. We don't associate anyone else with God. He's our creator, He's our sustainer, He's our giver, and so we worship God Almighty. So when we talk about monotheism, Tawheed, the concept of Tawheed, you can see that it is not just saying that God is one, there's only one God and that's it. It goes a lot deeper into that, which is the unity of the essence, attributes, actions, and the unity of the worship. And there are other unities that some people do tend to write about, or scholars mention. For example, the unity of the ownership, that God owns everything, this whole universe. Maliki yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu, aw Rabbil alameen, the Lord of the universe. Okay, so He owns everything. He's the owner. And so on and so forth. So there is some other types, but we'll just keep it for these four major ones as well. Now, having said this, why is this important here? And how can we talk about some of the things? Of course, in Islam, like I said, these things can be proven using reason and logic. For example, there was a king who said, I don't believe in a God. There's just no creator. I believe this whole universe occurred through, for example, a process that some say, the Big Bang or whatever it was, that basically resulted in this universe. There was no plan. He had a minister who was a believer. So what the minister did, he went out to the desert and he built a palace. He got some workers and they built a palace for him in the desert. Sometime later, he told the king, why don't we go for a walk in the desert? The king said, sure, why not? So they went on a walk in the desert. The king saw this palace. He's like, wow, this is great. Who built this? When did this come into erection? The minister said, chance. The bricks, they all came by themselves. They laid down, and they built this palace. Then the trees, they kind of came by themselves. They planted themselves all around the palace. Then water came, and that river that you see, or the stream around the palace, was all made, all by chance. Nothing, nobody's built this. He said, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. He says, someone must have built this. He says, well, that's what you say. He said, I never said that. He said, well, you say this whole universe was built by chance. So why can't you find it? Do you find it hard to believe that this palace is not built by chance? So that's one thing. That it's difficult to believe that this whole universe came into existence through a random process that was not planned. And as a scientist, I find that really difficult to believe as well, myself. And I'm not the only one. There are many other scientists who agree with me, who are not even Muslims. Okay? I gave some example to those of you who attended my lecture a couple nights ago, but for example, Michael Behe. Michael Behe is a biochemist. And he's Behe is spelled like this. Those of you who are interested. Behe. Michael Behe is at Lehigh University. Lehigh. In the States. He is a biochemist. And he basically studies bacteria. He looked at the mechanisms that exist within a bacterial cell. And how the machineries all are integrated together, how they work together. And he came to the conclusion that this could not have happened through a random process of evolution. I said, I just don't buy that. It doesn't make scientific sense. It's not logical. And therefore he was a spearhead of introducing what he called the intelligent, I think, you can excuse my intelligent, no, that is correct. Intelligent design. I'm not very intelligent at this time today. Theory. The intelligent design theory, which basically he says this universe, this world, had a designer. Everything must have had a designer. Us, even humans, we've had a designer. Because to have this whole process, or all these million processes that go within our body, to occur by a random process of evolution or selection, does not make any much sense. Like, take a look at our pancreas. The pancreas is such a small organ in the body, yet it's such an important organ in the body, because without it, most of us would be diabetic and would die. It has a sensor, basically, if we use modern terms. It has a sensor that senses how much sugar there is in your body, in your blood. And given the amount of sugar, it will send the amount of insulin that is required for the cell to be taken. So it's really a very, very close relationship and a very, great sensor that once it malfunctions, there's no other way of actually replacing it. Although there are people who are trying to do a transplant and so on and so forth, but yet it is such a great and important organ in the body. How did that sensor relationship all work to come into existence? By chance, it just does not work really well. Plus, once you have the sugar level going up in the blood, it will have consequences. You hear, like, I did research on diabetes for a few years. 80% of diabetic patients die of a heart attack. 80%. So that's 4 out of 5 diabetic patients die of a heart attack. Until the year 2000. In the year 2000, they classified diabetes as a heart condition. So, God forbid, if someone is diabetic, he's got a heart disease. And there is a pretty good likelihood that he will die from it, from the heart attack. And there's a whole theory as to why does this happen. And apparently, one theory suggests because the heart generally gets its energy from sugar and from fatty acids. 70% of the heart's energy comes from fatty acids, 30% comes from sugar. Now, for a diabetic person, he would miss this 30%, and his heart would switch to utilizing almost 100% of fat for energy. Now, fat oxidation to use energy requires more energy, which means the heart has to work harder. After a long period of time, the heart will just quit. Imagine if you run forever, non-stop. No matter, even if you're, Bolt. Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt? Yeah. Okay. Never mind. Maybe you guys in New Zealand don't know about that part of the world. Nonetheless, so even if he runs, he can never run forever. At one point, he'll get tired. He'll stop. So that's what happens. That's one reason. There are other reasons as well. But nonetheless, so all this mechanism that is so well designed, the insulin levels go down, sugar levels go up almost instantaneously. I mean, we did actually, I personally did studies in the lab where we showed that almost instantaneously, then there's an enzyme in the heart that really chews up on fatty acids to supply them for the heart for energy. That almost shoots up, instantaneously shoots up. Then the fatty acid, all this, does not make sense that all these mechanisms, which are so well interconnected with one another, occur via a random process of design. There must have been a designer. Okay? It just doesn't make sense. Another example I was giving someone, as a chemist, there are some reactions that I do in the lab to produce a particular product. And for these reactions, they're air sensitive.